All right. Now, Mr. Lempa, can we say that, the case between Joe Mwangi and managing Wendy Waini, can we say that this is a case of defamation? Can either of them, have a defamatory case?
Joe is a major, or he's a man who is over 18 years age. So he has what we call legal capacity to sue and to be sued. For Wendy is a minor. A minor has no capacity to sue or to be sued. A minor sues through the guardian, or what in law we call the next of friend. The next of friend. Now, there are two questions here that must be explained very clearly. Issue number one, can Wendy sue Joe Mwangi for defamation? Because your case is on defamation. Yes, she can. How? She can only sue through her guardian. She can sue through her next of friend, if it's a mother, if it's a father, if it's a brother, or any other person who is taking care of her. Yeah. A child can sue for defamation. Any person can sue for defamation. Today, we have what is called Children's Parliament and the Children's President. You have seen them. Yeah. If, for example, a child is said to be a liar, and the elections to be the children's president depends on the character of the child can say that her reputation has been lowered in the mind of the right-thinking members of the society. So therefore, a child can sue. That is issue number one. Okay. Issue number two is whether Joe Mwangi can sue the minor for defamation. The answer is no. Why? There are two reasons for this. Joe would be suing Wendy, or a minor. Joe would be suing a minor. Let's use the minor. Let's not expose this minor so much so that she's stigmatized by her becoming the talk of the society. Joe cannot sue a minor because this minor, even if he were to prove that this minor defamed him, which is very hard, I'll come to that point, what would he get from this minor? In the law of defamation, there is a principle that you do not sue a man or woman of a straw. What does a man of a straw mean? Is that a man whom, even if you got a judgment against him, you would not enforce it or execute it. Why? Because that person is unable to pay. It's like you sue me, I'm told to pay you 100 million. Where would you get 100 million from Lempa? Where would Joe get whichever amount he would be awarded in court from Wendy? Even if Joe were to prove that he was defamed by this girl, he would not be in a position to enjoy the fruits of his litigation or his judgment. Because where would a minor get money to pay him? If Joe is a man of such a high reputation and the court says, yes, indeed you've been defamed, how would he be in a position to enforce that judgment? Secondly, and which should have been the first, is that it's very hard for you to prove defamation from a minor because you have to go into the intention of the minor. The sting of defamation from the minor, or the words that are defamatory, that's what the sting of defamation is, have to come from the minor in a malicious way, because in any defamation you have to state the sting of defamation or the words that are defamatory, and from there you have to prove that indeed they lowered your estimation in the eyes of the right-thinking members of the society. So how would you be saying that a minor, probably 15, 10, 18, 17 years of age, defamed you? It would be very hard.
All right, so what are the legal provisions when it comes to managing young talent?
In managing a young talent, the best interest, we go back to it's like I don't know whether to call it leitmotif, the controlling idea in law. The best interest of the child shall always prevail in all matters pertaining to the child. If, for example, and I'll give you an example of so many cases on child maintenance. when a young man gets a child with a beautiful lady, and the lady sues for child maintenance, and they come to us, what we normally tell them that we are not going to win this case for you so that you don't give out money. All what we are doing is to bring down the amount of money that the court is going to tell you to pay, because of the principle of the best interest of the child. But of course, you look at Lempa, you say Lempa is an advocate, he should pay at least 30,000 house allowance, his child should go to a good academy, you put 25,000 per term, that's 75 per year, clothing, food, medical, all that. So what we normally tell men when they are defending such cases is that all what we can do is to substantively reduce this amount that is being asked. Otherwise, the court, any court, whichever way, wherever you go, whatever you do, the court will always tell you that the best interest of the child demands that you as the parent takes care of the maintenance of the child. So in contracts between men, or between old women and children, or between adults and children, they must always know that there is that general statement, strong general constitutional and international principle of the best interest of the child, which must always prevail in all circumstances.
Okay, so we've seen Joe Mwangi putting out some of the exchanges that they had with text messages, of course, that they had with Wendy Waini. This is a case of invasion of privacy, perhaps. What does the law say about privacy?
Yeah, that's what, again, we go back to the same principle. The best interest of the child demands that you do not expose her too much so that the child is not stigmatized by the society. That is the reason why, and I can tell you this has been in court for long, even if you found children committing a crime, would you cover them and have their story on your television? You are not supposed to do that, because the idea is to rehabilitate, because a child is still at the formative stage. The idea is to make sure that you do not interfere with the life of this child so that you ruin it forever at its formative stage. Okay? Children are very impressionistic. A child is innocent, and a child is likely to be spoiled, or it's likely to be spoiled or stigmatized if the child is, for example, exposed too much to an altercation with adults on television, on social media, on radio. So it's very unfortunate that the privacy of the minor is invaded in such a magnitude in social media and on television. Even whatever we are doing here, we must be very careful that we do not talk about that minor so that that minor is stigmatized. Yeah. The worst that can happen can only happen to the adult and not the minor. The minor is protected by the principle of the best interests of the child shall always be of paramount importance when in all matters affecting the child. So the best thing can only happen to the child, and the worst can only happen to the adult. And that is the law. And the law is made that way, both locally, regionally, and internationally. Okay. Wherever you go, you will always encounter that principle of the best interest of the child.
Now, when it comes to adults dealing with minors or even managing minors, there's a role of the media in this whole issue. How are we supposed to cover this? What would be your advice?
Yeah, actually, the only time you are supposed to cover children holistically is when they are in good behavior. Yeah. When a child is celebrating being the first child in the country, that way you go cover their parents, herself celebrating, singing, dancing. But if you go to the last child, the child who scores the lowest marks in the country, and takes the picture and do a story of her mourning with her parents, you can be sued for invading her privacy, which is the opposite of what you are allowed to cover. because you are allowed to cover a child celebrating, but you are not supposed to cover a child mourning.